In recent times, if you would people recall, the RTRAC and College of Defense Management had come out with 2 or 3 booklets on ancient Indian stratagems. And Indian Army had also launched Project Udbhav with USI, basically to research on indigenous military systems with a view to integrate age-old wisdom with modern military pedagogy. Like all novel and new ideas, actually, this also ran into a bit of a controversy with some of us, actually, military academicians, stating that in the age of nuclear war, artificial intelligence-dominated kind of net-centric operations, there's no place for ancient stratagems. Military weapon systems, supporting tactics, and military organizations have undergone such a transformative and profound change that they are no longer relevant. Well, I have some different views. I'll present these views now in front of you. And this is our view. It may not be the view, actually. So I'll also try and address this larger question whether ancient stratagems, maybe, Sun Tzu's Art of War, or Kautilya's Arthashastra, or Thirukkural, are they still relevant today, or how are they applicable today? To begin with, I'll talk about ancient Indian wisdom that's still relevant. Let me begin by saying that civilization's strategic thoughts are shaped by various factors, such as geography, historical experience. The Indian civilization derives its strength from over 5,000 years of heritage. Countless lessons from Indian history serve as the foundation for India's strategic thinking. Ancient Indian texts encapsulate this wisdom and serve as repositories of knowledge. Now I'll actually speak about a couple of ancient Indian strategies and stratagems which I think may be still relevant today. Let's first look at this concept of just war, which to us it's been taught by, that has been laid down by Saint Augustine in 4th century and has become very popular today. The concept is based on 2 cardinal postulates of ethical conduct in war, that is justa bello, and right to go to war, that is justa bellum, and we all read it in our textbooks and courses of instructions, etc. This concept of just war existed in India from mythological times, actually, as a righteous kind of a war. And who, other than Lord Rama, was the main progenitor and proponent of this particular concept. In the epic Ramayana, Lord Rama had every right to go to war, and he with his army demonstrated ethical conduct during this war. The vanquished, unlike in other civilizations, were not exterminated. One of their own clan, Vibhishana, was anointed as the king, and captured territories returned to that particular clan. Rama returned back to his own kingdom, Ayodhya. Even in Mahabharata, the Pandavas were the aggrieved party, having been a victim of attempted assassination in the Lagra, unfair partition of kingdom, and the women being insulted, and hence they were justified to go to war. In both these epics, if you look at the end game, it demonstrates a well thought out exit strategy, which probably has eluded most of the modern conflicts. Both epics talk about humility of the victor, inclusive approach towards future, involving both the victor and the vanquished. The methods employed by Lord Ram and Krishna can be called actually as war termination and consolidation operations in today's parlance. Let me now talk about Kautilya and his theory of mandala, which actually translates probably in today's this thing as a balance of power. Kautilya used the shape of mandala to derive or develop a political geometry of concentric circles to explain the relationship between 10 different types of kingdoms and their kings. The central reference point was own king, who was referred to as Vijik Ishu. The theory propounds the wisdom of forming alliances, which was also referred to as Shukraniti. If you look again at Mahabharata, I'm quoting back this epic again, it's actually a lesson in statecraft, diplomacy, and balance of power. Look at the profound number of rulers and kingdoms which were there, actually. They get aligned to two opposing sides just before the war. Something similar to what you can say happened during the Cold War or in the current situation of uncertainty about which every one of us referred earlier. Another important lesson enshrined in Mahabharata is the soft power of diplomacy and wise counsel and advice. The military power of Lord Krishna's Yadava kingdom went actually to the Kauravas. Lord Krishna's sage advice was able to shape the balance of power in favor of Pandavas, who eventually emerged victorious after 18 days of Mahabharata at Kurukshetra. Let me talk of another new concept which is prevalent today is net assessment and comprehensive national power. It took more than a millennium for the Western world to formalize the process of this net assessment. Ancient Indian texts spoke about this application in the formulation of strategies. Kautilya's Shadgunya Niti, that is 6 forms of state policy, he explained them as treaty making, that is Samdhi, war, Viraga, observing neutrality, Asana, marching, Yagna, making alliances, Samasraya, and simultaneous policy of peace and hostility, Dodibhav. So this is something akin to actually what we call as net assessment today. His Saptanga theory is a lesson in evaluating the comprehensive national power of nations. The 7 pillars of Saptanga theory talk about the Swamin, which is the king or the sovereign. It talks about Amatya, the government, the ministers. It talks about the Janpada, that's the territory which they hold. It's about Durga, that's the fortifications. Kosha, that's the treasury or the economic strength of the nation. And Danda, that's the military power. And Mitra, that's alliances, partnerships, which we talk about. So this is what is actually we talk about comprehensive national power. In fact, the importance of Durg or a fort and the army at a Dand can also be understood at an operational level. Actually, there's a need, we all have read, that there's requirement of always of a very strong pivot, which is to be held, from where actually you carry out maneuver. That's the army. The Sam and the Kosha, which we talk about, is all about economic well-being. Let me talk about modern war. It's often said that, technology has changed the character of war, but its basic nature has remained unchanged. The nature being violent and destructive. Some also say that, wars don't exist anymore. Obviously, the kind of wars, declared kind of wars, do not exist anymore. The kind of wars which we witnessed in World War II, World War I, etc. But yet, conflict does exist today. In fact, competition, crisis, confrontation, conflict, and combat, 5 C's, all exist together as part of one continuum today. All of this actually arise from 2 basic human natures, that is self-preservation and dominance. The interplay between man's society and nature arising out of this basic instinct of man leads to this 5 C's which I spoke about. And hence, some ancient concepts, percepts, and principles will remain timeless. They are as relevant today as they were in the past. But if you look at warfare, the technology part of it, then what we see is that has led to the change of character in warfare. And a term which we use normally is a revolution in military warfare. Let me talk about this, how technology has changed warfare and where this ancient stratagems may be relevant to us. It's said that RMA occurs when technology is introduced in large numbers in a particular force. It forces change in your tactics, your TTPs actually. Then both of them actually have a profound impact on organizations which support the technology and the tactics. In my view, we can talk about, from ancient ages, warfare has been evolving, but in recent times, the first revolution in military affairs, I have tried to say it's kind of maneuver warfare. This occurred due to advances in surface and air mobility and long-range precision weapons, like tanks, ICVs, SP vehicles, helicopters. And it led to development of concepts like air-land battle, the American concept, or deep battles of the Russians. Because of this, couple of sub-concepts which we heard when we were very young, like center of gravity, envelopment, culminating point, projection area, simultaneity, synchronization, non-linearity of battlefield. We heard all this. They were part of maneuver warfare. No longer heard. We created organizations for this, combined arms brigades, helicopter units, airborne brigades, etc. This all changed because of advances in technology and ICT and communication, and led to the second revolution, which was net-centric warfare. It introduced concepts like battlefield transparency, situational awareness, spectrum dominance, etc. And we started creating organizations that the Air Force have this IACCS node and SU units, etc. The Navy has this maritime domain awareness, infusion centers, infusion centers, etc. And the Army has its own CISCs and desks, etc. And the whole way the organization has changed, the concept of warfighting has changed. What's happening today is because of, again, a set of technological advances, we are actually at a cusp of a third revolution in military affairs. This revolution in military affairs, I actually trying to name it as convergence kind of a warfare. I'm calling it convergence because it converges first and second RMA into this third kind of an RMA. It converges kinetic, non-kinetic, and including the cognitive domain into one. It converges both time and space. It converges emerging and disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, hypersonics, deep learning. It's a convergence of tactics, operational art, and war strategy. And this kind of convergence actually allows one to react in those 5 C's which I told you, which are competition, crisis, confrontation, conflict, and combat, which is war. The world actually right now, the armed forces of the world actually are on the cusp of this great change, the third revolution in military affairs. Its shapes and contours are not very identifiable as of now, but a general trend line is available to us. The Indian armed forces got left behind in the first and the second RMA, like the nation got left behind by the Industrial Revolution. So what we are trying to do is trying to catch up with this. Some technologies which have ushered in first and the second RMA. That means if there is an aero engine which we don't have, we are rushing to obtain that particular technology. And then once the technology comes, then we are going to change our system. So if you are doing this when we are actually trying to play catch up with the West, first and second RMA, because that technology already exists, the tactics of that already exists, will be always be behind that learning curve. The only way we can actually catch up with the advanced nation is if we try and enter the third RMA along with them. That will require a lot of imagination on our part, a very innovative and inventive kind of an approach. And I've been advocating that this would be an RMA which is not led by technology, but led by actually tactics. So that's the choice before us. India at some point of time was actually a Vishwaguru. If you look at, we were gurus in say, astrology, physics, medical, astronomy, science, mathematics, etc., everything. Then the West was actually in dark ages. But somehow we lost this. While being Vishwaguru, we were also Vishwamitras. Why was this actually? This was because our basic ability to debate, analyze anything very deeply, deep learning was part of our DNA. That DNA has not changed. We are still the same Indians who were actually Vishgurus at one point of time. So, in this context of this applicability of this ancient stratagems, I would like to say that they are, if you, I may say that, at a larger level, they may help you understand statecraft, diplomacy, or say developing a grand strategy. But when you look at tactics and TTP, which is actually influenced by technology, and what I've been speaking about, that third RMA, then you may find it's not relevant. But what I'm trying to say, it is relevant because it tells you that you are a Vishguru at one point of time, and you got to think differently and produce something which will ask contemporary. So ancient Indian stratagems are actually a source of, should be a source of inspiration for us. This will be a source of inspiration to develop our thoughts on tactics, operational art, and strategy for combat. Presently, actually, we are conditioned to think in one way. We must use the ancient texts and stratagems as inspiration to further rediscover ourselves. There is always a need to welcome good ideas and develop our own. I like to quote Rigveda, which says, Anobhadra kartava yantu vishvata. That is, let the noble thoughts come from everywhere. And this is how, actually, you will truly liberate your mind, which again, I'll quote Vishnu Purana, which says, Sa vidya ya vimukte. So today we are actually a cusp of a great, great change. Means we've spoken about geopolitical change, means geoeconomic changes, and technologically we've spoken about. This particular change, if you go to actually leapfrog with rest of the world, actually, it requires actually a mindset change in our minds. And this mindset change is what our ancient wisdom will actually drive us and make it relevant. At the end, I would like to once again thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on such an important topic of ancient stratagems and modern warfare. Actually, I'd like to end my talk again with a short verse from Rabindranath Tagore. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. We just need to actually substitute the country with the armed forces. We've got to think differently in this particular age to beat the West in that learning curve. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.